Hi everyone, my name is Jade Calver. Today I'll be talking about Canadian immigration and police certificates that you need for immigrating to Canada. So today we'll be discussing some of the questions around police certificates and which police certificates you need for immigrating to Canada. Police certificates are different in each country and territory. Depending on where you live, they can have different names. Sometimes they're called police clearances, sometimes they're called good conduct certificates, judicial record extracts. I know Australia has a specific name for them, but effectively, as we know, a police certificate is to show that you don't have any criminality issues. If your certificate is issued in a language that is not English or French, you will have to have it translated by a certified translator. The requirements for police certificates will depend on which category of immigration you're applying for. So if you're applying for temporary residence, so whether that be a TRV or a study permit or a work permit especially, the country that you're applying through will either ask for a police certificate or it won't. For every country in which a client has lived for 6 months or more, even if you're applying through a country that doesn't specifically request a police certificate, I still have my clients include one for a temporary application. The reason being is that Immigration Canada can request this police certificate of you, and then it can delay processing times. So I always say, just include the police certificate up front, get it from every country in which you've lived for 6 months or more, and then that way there aren't any issues or any delays with processing of your temporary application. When it comes to permanent residency, the application requirements always require a police certificate. So again, it's every country in which you've lived for 6 months or more in a row. So for example, in the last 10 years, if you lived, let's say you lived in India for 4 years, you were in the US for 2, and now you're in Canada living temporarily, you would need a police certificate from India and the US. I only include Canadian police certificates if someone has lived in Canada for quite a few years as a worker. You don't have to include them up front for Canada. Immigration Canada will always request it for you if they want it. And then it's also important to note that with express entry in particular, it's very important that you have the right police certificate for that country. So online, you can find exactly which certificate they're looking for. I've seen clients who have come to me who have had their applications for express entry canceled because they provided the wrong police certificate for their country. A second important note is that if you're including a police certificate for a country in which you've previously lived, it needs to be issued after the last time you lived in that country. So a lot of my clients, they also unfortunately have canceled applications. They've gone back to that country, lived there for a while, and then used an older police certificate. You can't do that. You have to order a new one. So make sure it's the right format. So it's the name of the certificate that you're providing is the exact same one that Immigration Canada wants. And you're making sure that it was issued after you last lived in that country. In citizenship applications, my third point is police certificates are only required for countries in which you've lived for 6 months, so 180 days in a row or more since you became a permanent resident. A lot of clients, they misunderstand and they think they need a police certificate for a country in which they've lived prior to becoming a permanent resident, because a lot of the time they'll have lived somewhere else within the last 5 years because they became a resident less than 5 years ago. So you only need the police certificate if you've lived in a country for 6 months or more in a row since becoming a permanent resident. So in the citizenship application form, they'll ask you about your addresses and where you've lived. However, I find that Immigration Canada often will, for citizenship applications, if you've spent a significant amount of time in a country, even if it was not for 6 months or more in a row, they will request a police certificate. So depending on my client's situation, for example, if they've been working in the United States quite frequently, or maybe they've spent a significant amount of time, maybe in their home country or something because they're back and forth a lot, we may just request a police certificate, maybe not to submit with the application, but just to have ready in case Immigration Canada requests it for their citizenship application. So again, police certificates can be a little bit tricky for immigration applications. So just to summarize, they always need to be included with permanent residency applications. They do not need to always be included with citizenship applications, but only if you've lived in a country for 6 months or more in a row. They also, for temporary applications, they only need to be included if the country checklist requires it, but my recommendation is that you always include them up front to avoid processing delays. And then again, as I said, ensure that they're the correct format, ensure that you have the correct translations done, and that you're having them issued the correct validity. So that means ensuring that they were issued after the last time that you lived in that country. I hope that this information was informative. For any questions regarding police certificates and your immigration application, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We're online at calverimmigrationservices.com.